Good evening, and welcome to episode 100 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Uzamantungwa Kumalo. I actually can't believe we've gotten here. I know we've been doing a very big countdown to episode 100. We want to say, before we even start this evening's show, that thank you to each and every single one of you who continues to watch the Private Property Podcast, who comments, likes, asks questions, and of course, continues the conversation on our social media platforms. This is 100. I'm sure of many more hundreds to come. And we did, promise you a very special episode this evening, and that we are going to deliver. Some of what you can be you could look forward to this evening. I'm sure you've already seen it if you started watching just a little bit earlier on, is we are giving away, of course, that 5,000 Rand cash prize just for watching this episode. The very big thing about that cash prize is you have to be online and watching in order to get that prize, or in order to be able to win that particular prize. We have shared competition details in the link below, so do read them through and participate. You definitely do not want to miss when we announce who the lucky winner of that 5,000 Rand cash prize. We're also going to be giving away copies of the property guide. I've been speaking a lot about the property guide and some of the useful tips, hints that you're able to get, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, if you're a property investor, if you're a tenant. It's definitely the book that you want to get your hands on. It is a comprehensive guide that helps you on your property journey. So if you also want to stand a chance of winning that, then continue watching. We're going to be giving those throughout the during this episode, or even better yet, we'll probably make you wait until the end of the episode, and that's when we'll give away some copies of the show. And in terms of what we've got in store for you, if you've been watching the show, I mean, we've had 99 episodes, and episode 100 is one for the books. This is the episode that if you've been watching and maybe some of the things you probably didn't quite understand, or you've been watching and you're not definitely ready to walk the property investment journey, then you certainly want to stay tuned. We're looking at how to find and to close your first property, your first investment property. And part of the reason why, we've brought different guests, and I'm sure a lot of you will notice that, today's lineup, there are no strangers, definitely people that we've had along our journeys, because we want to tap back into, the great conversations that we had and really get some of the nuggets that we learned along the way. I'm going to do things a little differently this evening. I'm going to ask my guests to introduce them shortly, but I think one of the really big things to understand is we've got somebody from financial institution. We've got somebody who spoke finance with us. I think one of the big things that a lot of us as property investors sometimes struggle with is navigating our finances. We've got somebody who's walked this path and is doing an incredible job in growing that property portfolio and even buying blocks of flats and growing that. And we've also got somebody who's walked the journey and now also teaches and coaches in order to make sure that other entrepreneurs don't make some of the mistakes that she has made. So it really is a big lineup with great guests who are going to make sure that after you watch this, you are better equipped to make the right property, or to make a better property decision in terms of how to take the next step. I'm going to start with Miguel to introduce himself to our viewers at home. Miguel, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Zama. Thank you so much for having me on the show again. And congratulations on making it to episode 100. I think it's a great achievement. Congratulations to you and the team. So my name is Miguel Martins. I work for ABSA Home Loans. I'm wearing our red color tonight. And my job, I'm a product manager, and I look after our residential property investors. And I spend my days thinking about how we can help them grow their portfolios, get into property investment. And being a property investor myself, I'm able to have a job that also overlaps with my passion. So very, very fortunate to have the job that I have, and very, very excited to speak to investors almost daily. I'm having a conversation around property investment. So looking forward to tonight and to having a discussion and to sharing some interesting insights.
Thank you so much, Miguel. And of course, thank you to the Absa Home Loans team. We've been walking this journey with Miguel and the different members in the Absa Home Loans team, from Unondomiso and the rest of her team. It simply has been a great journey to walk, and we're definitely looking forward to many more episodes with yourself and your other colleagues at Absa Home Loans. I'd like Ntombi to introduce herself. Ntombi, thank you so much for joining us. Share with our viewers at home your background in property. I think your story was quite inspiring when we had you on the show.
Wow, thank you for having me. I'm really, really, really honored to be here right now. And congratulations, of course, for your 100th episode. But well, my name is Ntombiso Tole. I'm a property investor in the inner city. Basically, I invest in the inner city. So that's where my journey started, with obviously one flatlet, and then we just grew and expanded by investing in blocks of flats in the inner cities. But at the current moment, I'm the managing director of Intelli Property Management. We saw that there's a gap there when it comes to the management of properties, because that is obviously the key to successful investment. So we just opened that up, and we opened a company called Intelli Property Management. Intelli Property Management, as in we manage the properties intelligently by using a lot of technology. I mean, the current technologies to get the portfolios to get to where they should be, rather than make the mistakes that we have made. And thank you for having me, of course.
Thank you so much, Ntombi. And I think this is one of those things that are actually so important, and we'll definitely look at them in future episodes, that when, even as a property investor yourself, once your portfolio gets to a certain level, sometimes instead of outsourcing the property management, I've seen investors who end up starting their own property management company and start with their own investment properties first, before then seeking business from other people. So it really is one of those great things as a property investor, to always bear in mind that there are other revenue streams beyond your own portfolio that you're able to tap into. Echo, let's go to you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks very much. I'm really pleased to be here. And once again, congratulations on your 100th episode. My name is Echo Kwegrain. I worked as an investment banker, as a leverage financier, and then moved on to work as a business development manager for FNB Africa. And basically did that for 5 years, and I quit my job and followed my passion, which is property. Similar to Ntombi, we also invest in the inner city because there's a gap in the inner city. And BigRand actually was born out of us being able to solve issues. So we bought a property in Berea where the body corporate was dilapidated, and through effort and passion, we managed to put a body corporate together. And one of the old guys says, Echo, you're very passionate about this. Why don't you set up a company and manage the burden? And that's how BigRand was built, and hence the name BigRand. Be great at whatever you do. So that's what we do. So, and recently, also based on my passion to teach and coach people, we've also started the academy called Property Ask Echo Academy, which we, on a weekly basis, we post content on YouTube. And yeah, that's where we are now. The aim is to teach and use property as an instrument to build financial legacy and to build financial independence.
And of course, last but certainly not least, as Candice, I mean, we had you on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I think your story is also one that is quite inspiring. And I think I won't even, share with the listeners what it is. I think very quickly, please do, introduce yourself to our viewers. And again, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Zama, on this very special show tonight. I mean, you're celebrating your 100th show today. So well done to you and the team. It's really been an awesome experience being part of this platform. So thank you for having me back again. And just to introduce myself to everyone, so my name is Candice van Wyk. I am the co-founder of Property Pick, which is an online investment property platform connecting property investors to good investment deals. I'm also a speaker, and a property investor myself, of course, an entrepreneur and a property coach. And over the last few years, I've had the opportunity to train and coach thousands of people in the areas of property investing and helping them move their property and their financial goals forward. And that's just me in summary. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Candice. So I know a lot of viewers at home, we all know that we're in the middle of load shedding, and I was speaking to the guests before the show, coordinating everybody's, load shedding. Some of the guests made sure that they go to another part of town where there isn't any load shedding. So we're going to make sure that we wrap this up before the next load shedding starts, which is at 8 o'clock, so that everybody can not miss any part of the conversation. But before we get started, remember, if you want to stand a chance of winning that 5,000 Rand cash prize, we have posted the competition details down here below. We certainly want to be hearing from you. The first thing that we want to know, you've already seen the 4 guests that we're going to be speaking to this evening. We want to know what you've learned, or that one thing that you've learned while watching the Private Property Podcast, and do share that with us. It may even be from one of the 4 guests that we are speaking to right now. And the second one that we'd like to know from you at home is, what's the one topic that you still want us to cover, or the topic that you want us to go back to and look at it from another layer? Because I think the thing with property is all these topics have different layers, and sometimes once you understand certain elements of the basics, you want to go to the next level. So if there's that topic that you want us to go back into and just dive a little deeper, do let us know. We want to know from you. And you stand a chance of walking away with 5,000 Rand cash just by sharing one of those 2 details. And of course, we're also going to be giving away a copy of the Property Guide, which is a very comprehensive property book that has been put together by Private Property. Well, to get us started with this conversation, I'm actually going to start with with yourself, Miguel, because you're from the financial institution. I think the first question I probably want to ask you is, when we're looking at these historically low, interest rates, we are seeing that more and more people are becoming interested in property, or certainly talking about property, because people are saying, interest rates are low, so even your bond repayments are going to be, relatively lower than pre the decreases. I think firstly, before we even look at what banks look for and the criteria, perhaps take us through whether currently the banks even have an appetite to be extending, home loan facilities, because there are also people who are saying, no, maybe the banks are not handing out or are not granting any home loans because we are in the middle of a crisis. Maybe they're just being slightly prudent. So, do banks currently, certainly ABSA, I know you're not going to speak for all the banks, but certainly ABSA home loans, is there an appetite right now to be granting home loans to people who are coming through your doors?
Absolutely, Zama. So we're as a bank, we're in the business of lending. We're in the business of helping people purchase their homes, finance their homes, and finance their investment properties, right? So that is our business. We would never not be in the market. Doesn't mean that at this stage, with where things are, with lockdown, the impacts of COVID, and the economic impacts impacting people's affordability, it makes sense that our credit managers are assessing the applications a little bit more stringently than they did in the past. But what we have seen in the last 2 months, and especially as the deeds office opens up and as estate agents were able to get back to showing houses, that there's been a tremendous increase in applications. There's a lot of activity in the market. We're definitely getting a lot of applications and granting a lot of applications. We're still very much offering 100% loans, and what we offered 6 months ago, we're still very much offering at the moment. So we look at clients, we look at the individual situation, we do individual assessments, and then we give them the best deal that we possibly can. And as you said, every bank is doing this slightly differently, but absolutely, banks are open for business, and ABSA certainly is.
And that's so encouraging to hear, Miguel. And I think that's probably where I want to bring in Candice. So we know that banks are open for business, because I know that with some people, I've seen them so almost worry, if home loans are being extended. I've had many conversations with different people within the financial services sector and who work primarily with home loans, who are also saying that they're seeing quite a number of people coming through their doors, and a lot of their home loans are being granted. So then, Candice, I want to bring you in terms of how do we then go about identifying that first deal? Because I'm sure there are people, they've been watching the episodes, the past 99 episodes, and we're now looking for that first deal. We know that banks are going to very likely, extend that home loan and perhaps even up to 100%. How do we go about actually identifying that first investment property deal?
Awesome. So the first step for me from that point onwards, Zama, is definitely to know what your strategy is going to be first. So you need to know if you're going to be looking for a deal, do you want to acquire property because you're looking for monthly profit income, or are you looking to acquire property because you are looking for lump sums of profit income? So there are two main strategies in property. So we either invest for cash flow, the monthly profit income, or we're looking at flipping, which is buying and selling of property. So once you've decided what your strategy is, that will then also assist you in terms of identifying where the opportunity is going to be. So the next step would be then to get into your area research. So there are various platforms that, provide deals. I know Private Property does, as well as Property Pick. There are many other platforms out there. So you would need to either go onto those platforms, start looking for deals where you see the opportunity in terms of either, you're going to be investing for profit income, or you're going to be investing for lump sums of profit income. So you need to understand where the opportunity is. And we also have a lot of, reporting that also helps us to make that decision, because you can't just go into any area and think that you can buy a rental property and you're going to be generating income. You need to understand the demographics of that particular area. You need to understand what the potential rental income is of that particular area, before you can even buy the property. So you need to make sure that you do a level of due diligence first to see if your strategy is going to work in that area. And then I'm also assuming that by this point, you would have also determined what your affordability is. So are you going to be leveraging the bank in order to buy that property? Do you have capital of your own? Are you going to be collaborating and going into a joint venture type of deal? So it's important to also know upfront, what type of funding or finance you're going to be using in order to get into the deal. So I think those things are very important as a start. Identify a strategy. Also do a level of due diligence to understand whether your strategy is going to work in that particular area. And then once you have done that, then of course, now there's an opportunity to actually go out and start, assessing the actual deal. So you would need to start engaging with the sellers. You need to understand, okay, why is the seller selling? Because if you understand the reason why the seller is selling, it makes it a great opportunity for us to be able to close the deal, because you also know what their needs are. So it depends on the seller profile. Some sellers need to sell quickly because they need to sell the property because maybe they've lost their income for whatever reason. They don't want to have the property repossessed, so they need to sell quickly. Some sellers, for example, just need to relocate or immigrate quickly, whatever the reason is. So once you understand why the seller needs to sell, then of course you need to make sure that the conversation following from there onwards will end up being a win-win situation for both you as the investor and then of course the seller as well.
And I think one of the things, Candice, is a lot of property investors that I've spoken to, and unfortunately when they started their property investment journey, were not that as thorough and as deliberate in the beginning. I think a lot of us kind of learned along the way and ended up applying some of those lessons in subsequent, acquisitions. And that's why I want to bring in Dom, because I know that even with your story, from day one, you were not as deliberate. You learned to become deliberate, and that's how you're able to grow your portfolio and end up going to, buying blocks of flats. I think for you, what would you say would have been the thing you would have liked to know at the beginning? So if we're now speaking to somebody who is about to, start their property investment journey, what would you want them to know about what should be done first? Because I think you've walked the path accidentally and then became very strategic and now going into property management. So it's almost if you take Ntombi now, what would you have said to Ntombi when you bought that first in property? I think it was in Bloem that you ended up converting into student accommodation.
To be honest, my journey, we just bought, of course, but what I would have liked to know is how to structure your deals. I mean, how to structure your financing, how to structure the whole property portfolio. And what do you know about trust? Do you put it in a trust? Do you put it in an entity? Do you put it in in your own personal name. What are the benefits? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? How do you benefit tax-wise from the whole to buying of the property and the losing of the property? What makes financial sense in the whole property deal? You know, those are the things that I would have loved to know at the time. And even though coincidentally I did make profit immediately, because that first property that I bought was 100% financed, and I didn't have to take out any amount of money from my pocket. Even the transfer duties were part of the deal when I was buying the property. It was my first time buying a property. But afterwards, the mistakes you made is that it was in your personal name. So the tax benefits thereof were non-existent. Do you know what I mean? It was just, I'm buying and I'm here, but I don't know what I'm doing, you know? So going forward, the financial structure is everything, and how you pay your levies, how you pay your tax. I mean, what are the tax benefits that come with the first time buying of your property? Those are actually the most important things for me right now.
And that's why I want to bring in Echo, because the moment you said structure, I know that this is one of those conversations that we going to keep coming back to. And when we had Echo on, we were talking about, of course, the finances. So Echo, when we then talk about structuring, what should a first-time investor know? The very basic, almost a 2-minute, this is the very basic thing you should know about structuring. Because I think a lot of us, like in Ntombi, you get in and you're buying those first few properties in your individual capacity and you maxing out your own affordability. Nothing necessarily wrong with that, in the beginning, but I think a lot of seasoned people often say rather don't don't do it that way. So perhaps what kind of insights would you give us in terms of structuring the portfolio deliberately from day one, especially when you know that you want to be walking the property investment journey for a few years to come, instead of just having 1 or 2 investment properties?
Okay, so I think to start with everything in terms, before we even get to structuring the property, you need to define clarity, right? So what's your clarity? What because if you know what you want, you'll be able to filter out the weeds and stay with the best. So that's what you need to do. So if I take it from my personal journey, I would say when I buy a property, any single property, the cash flow must make sense, right? But I have to generate at least 5 income streams from a single property. And by that, I mean, the first is obviously, as an investor, is your rental income. The second one will be your capital appreciation, whether you're buying to flip, which is then getting back to what Candice was saying. So then you have to look at your capital appreciation. What we do, basically, the capital appreciation part forms about 10 to 15% of our portfolio, and I'll explain later if time permits. But we look at the rental income, one. We look at how to profit by leveraging to invest, and I'll explain later if there's time. So you need to profit to leverage to invest, right? That's the second part of income stream we look at. And the most important income stream is to how to generate money by protecting our against inflation. So how do we protect our money against inflation? So that's the fourth part. And the last, which is the most important one to me dearly, it's very dear to my heart, is how do you generate profitable legacy for generation, right? And those are the 5 basic income I look at before I even touch the property. Once you've done that, then we get to the numbers, because that's what you need to take to the bank. Majority of the first-time investors, that 99% make this common mistake. They look at the yield, the gross yield and the net yield. The gross yield and the net yield basically doesn't give you much, because your gross yield is your annual rental income divided by your purchase price. That it doesn't take into consideration the financial costing of your deal. So that is a very wrong number. That is what the estate agents tell you. And for example, you walk on the street, and depending on how much you bought the property, you'll have 5%, 5%, 6%, 7% on the same street. But the most important number you have to, the most important ratio that you have to look at is what is called the cash on cash returns, which people call it your return on investment, your ROI. That takes into consideration, it says your net profit over your cash invested. In simple terms, it's saying how much money can I leverage on the cash that I've invested? That's simple in simplicity. So what do? When you look at your ROI, it just takes your creative mind to start working. Unlike your gross, what do you call?
Unlike looking at the gross yield or your net yield,
where you only get the rental. So basically it's a single family home where you're getting one rental from one family, and that's it. And you divide by your purchase price. But if you do your return on investment numbers, you look at the component. If you break it down and you look at the first component, which is your annual rental, the reason why I said it gets your creative mind to work is then now you don't really consider the price of the property, but you look at the land and the location and what you can do out of it. And if you look at that, just by the rental income, you can split the property, you can remodel the property, you can remodel the property, you can split the property, you can change the property from commercial to residential and vice versa. So there's so much income, about 80% control on generating massive income out of the property. You then look at your cost, your annual cost, and that you can also manipulate that by either putting heavy deposit in. When you put heavy deposit, it means that on your monthly mortgage is less, so you get a higher number on top, and vice versa, depending on the strategy that you're using. Your cash investment.
I think one of the big things that I'm already picking up, and I did say this the last time that we spoke to you, is we're definitely going to be inviting you again, because finance, I think I was saying to one of the guests earlier that when you realize that property is finance, you begin to look at it from a fundamentally different lens, that it isn't just about the bricks and mortar that you're looking at, but you need to have a fundamental understanding of the finance. We'll see if we're able to touch on some of the things that you've raised, but definitely we'll be picking up on this, because our viewers at home have been asking. One of the episodes that they want us to do is around leveraging, and that one tends to be very comprehensive and needs its own kind of segment in order for us to be able to thoroughly walk you through that journey. I want to read some of the comments and questions that we're getting from our viewers at home. Of course, you can drop them down here below. We are celebrating our 100th episode here on the Private Property Podcast, and we also want to thank you at home for tuning in for the past 99 episodes. We certainly wouldn't have been able to get to where we are right now had it not been for your participation, your comments, your questions, your likes, and we definitely want to see more of that. From our viewers on YouTube, we've got Umesehla Mukhodla, who says, congratulations on your 100th episode. I'm a first-time viewer, and I will like to thank Echo or Be Grand for bringing the light into our building. You have restored hope and new beginnings. You are a leader. Thank you very much there, Masihla. We do hope that you'll continue watching the Private Property Podcast. We've also got CJ, who says, this is great, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much there, CJ. And we've got Uleslo, who says, hi, everyone. Thanks for this, adding more to my collective knowledge about property. I appreciate it. It's only a pleasure there, Leslo. And also coming in from YouTube, we've got Lisidi, who says, they've been viewing for the past 2 years and can't seem to find a reasonable offer, nor a seller who's in a rush to sell. And I want to bring you in, there, Candice, because we're currently facing a situation where we know it's a buyer's market, and I think we're even having this conversation with different guests. We know it's a buyer's market, and some sellers are eager to sell, And if anything, this is a time where if you've priced your property well, it will sell. But some sellers are also taking chances. I mean, I was sharing with listeners the other day that you've seen areas that you've been monitoring. Some of the sellers are putting out adverts that are significantly higher than, we'll say the general market rate of that particular area. So they're also using, these historically low interest rates to sort of up their prices. What kind of tip would you give to somebody who says they've been looking, but they're struggling to find, that right deal? Because it is important that, especially that first one, you don't want to have to put too much money into upfront and only realize later that you actually overspent on that property.
Okay, great. So I know when you start out, it's definitely not an easy journey to find the good deals. And I mean, it was the same experience that I had when I started my journey as well. And one of the reasons why we really put the Property Pick platform together is because we wanted to help investors be able to tap into a platform where they're able to find investment type deals. Now, I know that there are other ways of finding the deals, but those are one of the platforms. Also, when you become trained in the area of property, there is a way for you to market, to that particular seller. Because remember, we're not just looking for any seller as a trained investor. You want to make sure that you're tapping into a seller who really needs to sell quickly. But what I would say to you is, try and find platforms where you're able to find the good investment deals. And also, if you have tapped into a seller who's not negotiable on their price, just move on to the next deal. Mention to them that, of course, when you're ready to sell or when you're ready to reconsider my offer, please do let me know. Because at the end of the day, you can't just push yourself into a deal because you want to have an investment property. You need to make sure that that investment property is going to be bringing money into your pockets every month if your strategy is a rental strategy. So just remember that's very important. And I've said this to my students, move on to the next deal. So as property investors, you're not just it seldomly happens where you go to the first opportunity and that opportunity works. It really seldomly happens that way. It is really a journey that takes time. You need to make sure that you go out, you do your homework, you do your research. You have to view multiple properties, run the numbers against those different deals and see what's going to work for you. And then, of course, once you understand what type of offer you're able to present to that particular seller, that's where you start negotiating. And of course, if the seller's not open to negotiation, you just move on to the next deal. Now, it also depends where you're staying. So, I would say when you're starting out in property, start going to the areas around you, maybe in your particular area, start researching from that perspective, start talking to the agents in the area, find out what's happening in your market, find out where the demand is, where the opportunities are, talk to the municipality in your area, also understand what upcoming opportunities, are possibly going to be coming into that particular area. So you really need to become the area expert as far as your property investing is concerned in order for you to make the best investment decision for yourself. So just remember, it takes time, it is a journey, but leverage some of the platforms that have been put in place and always make sure that you run your numbers. If it doesn't work, just move on to the next deal. You will find that right deal that comes your way.
And I think, Candice, the flip side of that coin is oftentimes sellers who are not negotiable tend to not move that property. I mean, I've seen properties that have now been on the market for the third consecutive year, and their price point is consistently wrong. I mean, there are a few properties in one of the areas I monitor where I can see they keep changing the agents that they're using, but it's still the same property and it's just not moving. And it's because I probably suspect that even though an agent comes in and says, this is the price point you should be going at, it's a seller who wants this amount, and they consistently keep not getting that amount. So I think also understanding, as somebody who wants to go into property investment, or if you're a property investor, that once you start monitoring an area, you're also able to see when it keeps going back on the market. And sometimes you realize that it's literally just changing agents. That should be an alert to you that that price point wasn't the greatest, and now they have to change agents. So being able to monitor that, and it's kind of saying you want to be almost an area specialist of the area, or areas rather, that you want to be investing in. And the moment you get that, it's so much easier for you to even negotiate once you see the other properties that are going on the market. When you view that property, you can say, I know this has been on the market for the past 7 months. And I'm sure by now the owner's tired of getting XYZ offers. And perhaps by the time you come along, that's when they're like, you know what, I'm actually just going to take this offer and walk away. this has been on the market for quite a long time. But Miguel, I want to actually then bring you in, because I think one of the things that, you know, Absa Home Loans has on the market that I'm usually quite excited about, and that a lot of people tend to not know about, is of course the future rental income product that Absa has. And I think it's one that's so useful for property investors in particular, because as we were saying earlier, you sometimes buy certain properties in your individual name and you realize that there's a ceiling that you're obviously going to meet. But you want to be buying more properties, and you've got this additional rental income that you have. Perhaps share with us, you know, tips for entrepreneurs or property investors rather, who do now have a few properties under their belt and want to grow their property portfolio, because this is one of those products that they're obviously able to, you know, tap into if they meet the criteria. What kind of tips would you then give to a property entrepreneur or property investor who's in that boat?
No, thanks, Amma. So, so to answer that, and picking up on the previous conversation, I think before you invest in property, you got to invest in yourself.
Yeah.
I think there are books to read, there are websites to go to, there are podcasts to listen to, and really invest in yourself before you invest in property, because you're either going to learn and make those mistakes yourself, or you're going to read about how somebody else made those mistakes. And part of that is understanding. So if the one part of the learning is how property works, which properties will define your strategy, etc., it's also learning about how the banks will enable you to finance your property strategy and your property growth. So, and that's part of your learning. And as Absa, and that's what we're doing here tonight, and that's what I often do, is we really make a lot of time to spend, make ourselves available to spend time with investors to discuss where they are and where they're going, and maybe how to consider home loan finance to help them get there. So I'm very much open to doing that. Referring to our future rental income, so what we found was that investors who had one or two properties got stuck. They ran out of affordability. The income or the salary that allowed them to buy their first property, and inevitably their first property is actually their home. So they use up their affordability there. They maybe bought a second property, which might be their first investment. But either way, those investors got stuck, and they found that the affordability that they had, even if they included the existing rental income that they were getting from their first rental property, didn't allow them to actually grow, and they hit that ceiling. And that's where we developed future rental income. So future rental income is for an existing investor. They need to already have two properties. They need to have gone through the process of finding a property, finding a tenant, managing a tenant, paying for the costs, etc. Because what future rental income allows an investor to do is to utilize the income or the rental that they expect to get for that third or more property as part of their affordability. So now the property they're purchasing is actually allowing them to grow their portfolio. And that allows them to then start actually growing their portfolio, break through that ceiling, and keep on growing. So we're the only bank that offer it. We really think that we partner with our home loan investors, and we work with them to grow their portfolios in the right way. But as I started off by saying, it's investing in yourself, investing in your knowledge base, grow your network of other investors, understand what their strategies are, what works for them, and as you define your own strategy, and then look at what enables you in the environment, how to work with the bank to grow your property portfolio.
You know, Miguel, one of the things that you mentioned a little earlier is around mistakes, and how there are certain mistakes that you are able to avoid because there are various resources from the Private Property Podcast. We've also got, of course, the Property Guide and various other platforms. I know even APSA itself, on its website, you're able to use their resources to learn a bit more about property as you walk your property journey. I want us to talk and wrap up with mistakes, because I'm also mindful that ESCOM is going to cut us off. But of course, to our viewers at home, we're always here at 7 o'clock. So this was the nice snapshot, if you're watching us for the first time, of what you've missed, but also a snapshot of what to look forward to. You can already see that there's so many different dynamics, especially when it comes to growing your portfolio. There's only one thing or one step in buying those first few, and as Magali is saying, you do hit that glass ceiling, and you want to now find different ways to grow and scale your property portfolio as much as possible. And we'll look at some of those ways that you can grow and scale your portfolio in future episodes, because there are different ways to go about doing so. I think what I even like is, our guest this evening, Dombi, has done this. Echo has also done this, where you also then go into property management, because you've managed to actually grow your own portfolio, and so create another revenue stream for a different business, part of the greater portfolio. So strategies like that you can use are certainly one of the things that we're going to be exploring in future episodes. But to close off, this evening's episode, I actually want to do a round robin of mistakes to avoid. And this could be mistakes you've done before, mistakes that you've seen other investors do, but certainly mistakes that people who are looking to go into property, investment, or entrepreneurs who've already bought a few, these are still mistakes that you want to avoid. I'll start with yourself, Candice. What is the one mistake that you'd say, this is the one mistake that a first-time property investment or a property entrepreneur should definitely avoid?
So I think in my case, when I started buying property, I obviously didn't have the knowledge and the education that I have today. So I bought the property without knowing what the market value was on the property. So that meant I spent way more for the property than I was supposed to. Also, I didn't run any numbers on the deal. So I thought that I was buying an investment property when in fact, I had to pay in a certain amount every single month in order to have a tenant staying in my property. So when you start out, of course, it's important to get the right level of knowledge. It's important to make sure you get a coach as well. But I think if you are in a position where, you haven't been able to tap into those types of platforms, before you make that decision, really understand what the market value is of the property. You don't want to be spending above market value. As investors, we actually want to make sure we're always buying below market value. And then the other thing that's bundled with that is, I would say, make sure that you understand all the costs involved in terms of acquiring that property, and also for maintaining that property every single month. So you then need to look at all of those costs, and then you need to look at the income that you could potentially generate, and make sure that the income is a real amount that you would be able to collect, not just the amount that you are thumb sucking because you think that's what you can collect. Make sure you do your research, do your due diligence. And then, of course, once you are able to just do that and see that you're going to be generating some profit income, then of course, I think that's a positive. But there's so much involved. As Miguel said, you really need to make sure that you expose yourself to the right platforms, get the right level of knowledge and understanding. Like anything in life, you have to invest in yourself. So make sure you spend time investing in yourself before you make those decisions, because it's so important to buy property even in the right structures, as Ntombi said. And these are all things that I learned along my journey. I didn't know that it's not in my best interest to buy property in my personal capacity when I started out. So those are all things that you need to learn as well, because it's really going to set you up for success, and you'll just be able to build from there onwards, and of course leverage the awesome product that APSA also has available. So you want to make sure that you get it right from the beginning, so that you are able to expand and grow your portfolio as you move forward. But I think those are just some basic tips that I can share, depending on where you are in your journey at this time. Thanks, Amma.
Thank you so much there, Candice. And Ntombi, what is the one mistake that you would say to our viewers at home who are, first-time, property investors, that they should avoid at all costs?
I'm just going to add to Candice, because I loved what Candice has said so far. But for me, the offer to purchase, don't just sign it, don't just take it as is, read it, proofread it, and it must have subject to, so that you can have an exit strategy from your offer to purchase. Do not bind yourself to something that may as well just take you into another a pit. And be sure to make your, do your due diligence, please. Go and inspect the property that you're buying. Ask for the 5 days or 10 days due diligence period after within the offer to purchase. It's important for yourself so that you go and inspect all on your own the property you're buying, because the property can look good, the numbers can look good, everything can be good. But when you come down to the property, it has water damage that was not identified. It has other damages that may be very costly to you as a buyer. Be very careful. It's very important. That's all I can say.
Thank you so much, Ntombi. Thank you so much, Ntombi. And I think it's actually such an important one, because a lot of us, and I'll say us, we often sign without reading certain things. Oftentimes, the offer to purchase, you think, oh, it's so long. It's almost like when we agree, those terms and conditions that we never read when we're downloading apps. I think sometimes people treat the offer to purchase that way, where you just say agree, and you don't know what you've just agreed to, except the offer to purchase is legally binding. And I think the implications of it are so far reaching that if you just took a little bit of time to read through it, and in the event where there's something you don't understand, ask the estate agent. They will go through it line for line. If there are words you don't understand, ask questions. I think that's one of the things that you want to make sure you have a good understanding of, so that you don't get yourself into a contract that you don't understand what the exit strategy is. I promise we'll do an episode on understanding the offer to purchase, because we've had a conversation around suspensive clauses, understanding what those are and how they work. But I think in its entirety, it's also important to know what should be included in the offer to purchase, because I think some people definitely don't have a good sense of that, especially earlier on. Eko, I'm going to come to you. What's the one mistake that you think first-time property investors should avoid? Just one mistake, Eko.
So one mistake, they should obviously educate themselves, go to seminars, you can go to classes, like the property Ask Eko class, you can come through, we can help. But most importantly, you must use the same energy that you use to get the money from the bank to collect your money. So that's the most important part. You need to collect that rent, the same energy. And also always figure out who is going to pay for you. So don't say, because I've got a salary, it's fine, I'm going to put in 100 rand and it's fine. No, make sure that if the bank says, give me 100 rand, you find that person that's going to give you 110 rand. And I second with what Candice said, if you do your research well and you understand the market, you would get those kind of numbers. So your cash flow is very important, but you use the same energy to collect your money, because you need to think that it's
absolutely love that. Make sure that you collect rent, because it's not enough to get the asset, go through all those hoops to finally get it, and then you relax when it comes to collecting rental, because you think, they're just going to keep depositing it into my account. I absolutely love that. So the mistake you want to avoid is not being as diligent in your rent collection as you were in chasing the money or raising the money for that particular asset. Miguel, we're going to wrap up with you. I know that we'll be seeing you for future episodes. We'll certainly be seeing somebody from the ABSA Home Loans team in future episodes. What's the one mistake, certainly from a bank's perspective, and also working with property investors on a day-to-day basis, as you were saying, what's that one mistake that you'd want our viewers at home to avoid when they're looking to go into property investment?
So Zama, I see this all the time. You are your most important asset. Look after your credit score, because when getting into property, and especially as you're growing, if your credit score is not good, you are going to struggle to get financing. Even if you can get financing, the banks are going to ask you for a higher deposit, which means you need to collect more cash. And even if you have a bad credit score, you can still get into property, but now you've got to go find partners. You've got to go find great deals that you've got to share with partners, etc., etc. Guard your credit score. Treat that as one of your most valuable assets, because if that credit score is tainted, you will struggle. So it's a very simple thing, but it's an incredibly important thing. You are your most important asset. Look after your credit score. There obviously are many little lessons, but I'll leave it there as a simple but very, very key lesson.
Thank you so much there, Miguel. I'd like to say thank you to our panel this evening. Thank you, Candice and Ntombi, Echo, and Miguel for joining us for our 100th episode here on the Private Property Podcast. It has been quite an insightful one. And as I was saying to viewers at home, this is going to be what you can certainly expect in future episodes. And if you've missed some of our past episodes, of course, go to our whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube channel to catch up on what you have missed out, because this is part of what you're going to expect. And I think one of the big things is you want to always come with the questions, especially if you've started walking the journey. And if we don't get to it on the live show, we definitely do continue the conversation on our social media platforms. We've become a community that helps each other navigate our property investment journeys. And we definitely do look forward to sharing more of that. So thank you very much to my guests. I'm going to let them go. I'm going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we are, of course, giving away that 5,000 Rand cash prize, as well as the property guide to a few lucky winners. Thank you so much to my guests. And we are going to be back
Thank
just
you.
after.
Thanks, Sama.
Welcome to the first edition of the Private Property Podcast. As usual, we'll be bringing you experts to help us navigate this COVID-19 crisis, whether you're a landlord or a tenant, or somebody perhaps even looking to get into the property market and don't understand how this crisis is actually going to affect your property journey.
Yes, we certainly do find ourselves in very, very interesting and very unique times.
What I found in my experience that in terms of buying repossessed property, I've had a lot of my wins because of easy sales.
So you want to have good credit on your credit profile. You definitely don't want to have no credit profile on your credit profile. This is what we determine as a thin credit file.
Accrued value during the course of the marriage will have to share with the other spouse, depending on what their contract says, the assets they gain during the course of the marriage. So that's basically what it means.
We are profiling young people in property. You all know how excited I am to talk about property, but I even get more excited when I talk to my peers.
Millennials and young professionals are money conscious. We understand that money doesn't grow on trees, and so we're trying to find ways to accommodate ourselves.
Who are the parties in the buying and selling process, right? So you have the buyer, you have the seller, you have the bank, and you have an estate agent.
Good evening and welcome to episode 66 of the Private Property Podcast.
Probably top of the list when you're sourcing a new tenant is that word of a credit check. Very, very, very important. That's your starting point.
You want to create a savings buffer for you to be able to look at investments that are longer term.
You know, those contracts, those offer to purchase have been drafted by a legion of lawyers, and I can make fun of lawyers because my wife is a lawyer, okay? So.
Welcome to episode 80 of the Private Property Podcast.
Out of everything we've discussed tonight, I think your managing agent is critical because they're the custodian of the relationship. They're the ones that are managing the affair.
We are there to analyze a market and to look at the behavior of buyers and sellers in the market.
Be able to market yourself because in essence, real estate and as an agent, it is you that first buy before we buy the company that you're with.
Welcome to the first edition of the Private Property Podcast. As usual, we'll be bringing you experts to help us navigate this COVID-19 crisis, whether you're a landlord or a tenant, or somebody perhaps even looking to get into the property market and don't understand how this crisis. Welcome back to episode 100 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Uzamanto Kumalo. Thank you so much for tuning into our special episode. I thank, of course, to Echo, Dombi, Miguel, and Candice. They're certainly not new here on the Private Property Podcast. You'll certainly be seeing more of them in future episodes. It is that time of the evening where we're giving away that 5,000 Rand cash prize. We did ask you to, tell us what more you want us to look at, that one issue or perhaps a few issues that you want us to still explore, and also wanted to find out what are some of the big things or the one lesson that you have learned while watching the Private Property Podcast. We're going to do a very random selection. We did share the competition T's and C's in the link below, and I think we can start our picker to see who stands a chance of winning the 5,000 Rand cash prize. Remember, when your name comes up, I think you have to text us down here below within 30 seconds. And in the event that you do, then you're going to be walking away with that 5,000 Rand cash prize. As you can imagine, my only anxiety is we're going to be experiencing load shedding soon. So between Eskom and our competition giveaway, we'll see how it goes. It's the reality of living in South Africa right now. And I do hope that the person that gets picked and that winner is Unompumelelo Mthethwa. Nompumelelo Mthethwa, you have been picked. You have 30 seconds to text us down here below, and then you'll get to walk away with that 5,000 Rand cash prize. And before, we're going to give you a few more seconds. We did say we're also giving away, of course, the copy of the property guide, which is a very comprehensive book that you certainly want to get your hands on. And the first person who walks away with that copy is Martha Shingane. Martha, congratulations. You're the first winner of the property guide, and you're going to be walking away with that book. Please do send us an inbox so we can send it through to you. I'm just going to find out from my colleague if Unompumelelo has raised her hand in our comment section, or are we going to be moving on to the next person and trying to pick the next person who's going to stand a chance of walking away with that 5,000 Rand cash prize. And as the team is confirming if Nompumelelo has indeed texted us, I'm going to announce the second winner of the property guide. I did say we're going to be giving away these, and you definitely want to get your hands on this book. The next winner of the property guide is Nkateko Ahape. Nkateko Ahape, another regular of the Private Property Podcast. Congratulations. You walk away with that copy of the property guide. The team has let me know that Unompumelelo Mthethwa has not responded to us, and so we're going to pick the next potential winner of that 5,000 Rand cash prize, and we can start the ticker right now. And as the ticker is, slowly choosing the next one. Remember, we did say that in order to win this one, you're going to have to be live with us. And the second person who could potentially win is Unati Wendy Boy. Unati, you have 30 seconds to text us down here below in order for you to walk away with that 5,000 Rand cash prize. And as we wait for Unati to text us down here below, the next person who is going to be walking away with that, with a copy of the property guide is Ravindra Bapu. Ravindra Bapu, congratulations. You walk away with the copy of the property guide. Please do send us a message in our inbox so that we're able to get your copy to you. We're just quickly now verifying if Unati has texted us. Her 30 seconds has run out. Somebody in the team is just doing a quick check to see if she has texted us. And as we wait for that confirmation, the next person who's going to walk away, you can see we're giving away quite a lot this evening. The next person who's going to walk away with that copy of the property guide is Bongani Queen B Mabunda. Bongani, congratulations. You walk away with your copy of the property guide. I do hope that you're going to find this very useful. It is one of those guides that you want to get your hands on and read as much as possible as you navigate your property journey. And of course, if you're not going to be one of the winners, one of the ways that you can get yourself the property guide is by going to is by going to www.thepropertyguide.co.za. Just going to ask my colleague, has Unati confirmed? And I hear that Unati texted Bara how unfortunately she didn't say 100th episode, which was in the competition T's and C's. We're going to go to the third person. Remember, you have to say 100th episode. We have posted the rules down here below. So we're going to do this the third time. I do hope this one takes it home. So fingers crossed. It's 5,000 rands on the line. So make sure if your name comes up, and the name now is Lili Malili. Lili Malili, you have that 30 seconds to drop us a message down here below. And that is, of course, 100th episode. You can go to the rules to see what you need to do. And as we wait for her 30 seconds to run out, the next person who walks away with the book is Bongs Chela Sabakwena, who's no stranger to the Private Property Podcast. Congratulations, Bongs. You also walk away with your copy of the Property Guide. And the next person is Amy Tando Lawrence Ditra, who walks away with a copy of the Property Guide. All these winners, please do make sure that you send us an inbox so we can get your copy to you. Let's quickly check if Lily has, said 100th episode down here below, and of course walk away with that 5,000 rand rather cash prize. We're going to give her a few seconds to see if she's contacted us. And then the next person who's going to be walking away with the copy of the Property Guide is Glad Shirinda. That is Glad Shirinda, who walks away with the copy of the Property Guide. Congratulations to you, Glad. I do wish you all the best in going through it and learning as much as possible on your property journey. And of course, to our viewers at home, you can go to www.thepropertyguide.co.za. A copy of the Property Guide is available for a limited 150 rands. And all you do is go to okay, so the team has gotten back to me about this one, and I think they'll also post down here below in terms of the winner. It seems as though Unati, who was the previous person, did in fact also say 100th episode. I think they just missed her text, and so we'll be in touch with her 5,000 rand cash prize. Well, thank you so much for all of you for watching us at home, but also for participating throughout now it's the 100 episodes. I still do have a few more winners who are going to be walking away with this. The next one is Usanelisiwe Uze, as well as Usemi Mahlatse, and lastly, Shakong Huakhelo Shakong. So those are the 10 lucky winners who walk away with their copy of the Property Guide. Make sure you drop us an inbox. We'll also share the names right here below so that you know if it is in fact you. Send us an inbox and we will make sure we get your copy to you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a pleasure for the past 100 episodes to spend the evening with you talking property, investing, how to have a conversation with your landlord or as a tenant, how to engage the conversation with your landlord, growing your property portfolio, scaling your property portfolio, understanding the finances around your property portfolio. And of course, you can look forward to this and many more as the podcast grows, as the community grows. As a team, we're also looking forward to giving you more of what you want to hear from us. We're definitely going to be looking at all the topic suggestions that you've sent and make sure that we bring the right experts to unpack and make us better understand those issues. It has been a pleasure from me, Zamantu Nwakumalo. I'm back again tomorrow evening. We have another quadrangle tomorrow evening, but this time it's Ebo quadrangle. And I know most of you have watched us before, know that they are brothers. And we're also going to be looking at, sectional schemes and some of the issues or misconceptions that people tend to have when it comes to sectional schemes. We're going to be debunking some of the common, misconceptions when it comes to sectional scheme owner hold. And this is one of those conversations that you don't want to miss. I know we also spoke to Zelinda earlier on, so do familiarize yourself with sectional schemes because it is one of those situations where we're going to be living in properties that are in sectional schemes or community schemes. in one way or another. We're going to wrap it there for this evening on the Private Property Podcast. ESCOM has played along. It's just a little bit after 8, so if the electricity now goes out, it's fine. We have concluded our episode. Thank you so much for continuing to watch us, and we do hope that we continue walking this journey with you for 100 more episodes. And I'm signing off this evening, and as usual, I'm hoping you're staying home, you're staying safe and keeping warm. We're back with you again tomorrow evening. Welcome to the first edition of the Private Property Podcast. As usual, we'll be bringing you experts to help us navigate this COVID-19 crisis, whether you're a landlord or a tenant, or somebody perhaps looking to get into the property market and don't understand how this crisis is actually going to affect your property journey.
Yes, we certainly do find ourselves in very, very interesting and very unique times.
So what I found in my experience that in terms of buying repossessed property, I've had a lot of my wins because of easy sales.
So you want to have good credit on your credit profile. You definitely don't want to have no credit profile on your credit profile. This is what we determine as a thin credit file.
Accrued value during the course of the marriage will have to share with the other spouse, depending on what their contract says, the assets they gain during the course of the marriage. So that's basically what it means.
Profiling young people in property. You all know how excited I am to talk about property, but I even get more excited when I talk to my peers.
Millennials and young professionals are money conscious. We understand that money doesn't grow on trees. And so we're trying to find ways to accommodate ourselves.
Who are the parties in the buying and selling process? Right? So you have the buyer, you have the seller, you have the bank, and you have an estate agent.
Good evening and welcome to episode 66 of the Private Property Podcast.
Probably top of the list. when you're sourcing a new tenant is that word of a credit check. Very, very, very important. That's your starting point.
You want to create a savings buffer for you to be able to look at investments that